Hi everyone, I'm Ingrid from General Assembly. Welcome to today's webinar, Why Purpose, Why Now, Why You, presented by Carolyn Butler-Madden. Thanks for joining us, and a big thank you to the Cause Effect for collaborating with us on this event. Firstly, to introduce General Assembly, we are a global tech education company helping people upskill in technology, business, data and design, and our mission is to empower people to pursue work they love. You can visit us online at ga.co to check out all our offerings, from classes and workshops to longer format courses and free events just like this, currently all running live and online. Before we begin, I'm going to run through some housekeeping information for you. For this webinar, attendees will have no video and are muted, so don't worry if you can't see yourself. To participate in the webinar today, I'd like to point you to the menu bar down at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You'll see two functions, the chat box and the Q&A. If you have content-related questions for Carolyn, please only ask those in the Q&A box, and we'll get to as many of those as we can in the Q&A part at the end of the session. This is so we have all our questions in one place and don't miss any. If you have any troubleshooting issues, GA-related inquiries, or any general comments you'd like to make on today's event, please pop these in the chat box and our team will follow up with you as necessary. A recording of this session will also be emailed out in the next week. Lastly, it would be wonderful if everyone could take a couple of minutes after the event to fill out a feedback form, which we will also link in the chat box at the end of the event. And without further ado, I'd now pass on to Carolyn to kick off. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the event.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. Good to see people from all over the place joining us. So yeah, let's get into it. Why purpose, why now, and why you? So I want to ask you a question firstly. When thinking about your organization, the one you're employed in or you lead or you own, what is the most important thing in your organization today? Is it growth or is it trust? If you can, I'd love to see some responses in probably in the Q&A. Answer honestly, because I think we'd get a few different. Oh, trust. Just seeing if this goes down. Definitely trust, growth, both. Absolutely, I think that's fair. And that's it, isn't it? I mean, I think larger organizations are often driven by growth because they have that pressure, they have to deliver that return on P&L. But Mark Benioff, who is the founder and CEO of Salesforce, he says, if anything trumps trust, we're in trouble. You have to choose what is really important to you. We're living in a new world and trust better be number one. So the world we live in today is more transparent than it has ever been before. Customers have more choice, they have more control than they've ever had in history. And if businesses are to secure their license to operate and thrive in the future, they have to build trust. And I'll talk about this license to operate more as we get into it. So my name is Carolyn Butler-Madden. I'm founder and chief purpose activist at The Cause Effect. We're a consultancy that specializes in purpose. We help businesses to define their purpose and then use it to create social impact, so social purpose. And we do it in a way that enables them to drive profit through purpose. Now, briefly, my background is in the agency world. I had over 30 years, first 10 years in London, 20 years in Sydney, working in the agency world, for 20 years running my own small agency, working for big brands, so brands like Pepsi and Cadbury, Panasonic, Microsoft, you know, big alcohol brands and drinks brands and all sorts. And I loved what I did, right? I actually fell into this career by accident, but I love what I did. But there was always a little bit of a disconnect because it didn't align with my values and my vision for the kind of world I believed we should live in. But I did it. And then a few things happened and it forced me to look at what I was doing. I went in 2012 to Chicago to the world's biggest conference on social purpose. And it absolutely blew me away because back then in 2012, they were way ahead of us here in Australia. And they were looking at social purpose in a way that was strategic. You know, they were driving social impact. Their brands were driving social impact in a way that built business value and brand value for them. So win-win. And I was just electrified, energized. I just came back as a raving evangelist for change and, you know, annoying a lot of people talking about this new thing that I discovered. And I tried to steer my small agency down that path. But it was too early for Australia. And 3 years ago, I made the decision to take a huge leap of faith and pivot and leave my agency behind and start from the ground up in this, what is now the Cause Effect. I wrote my book, Path to Purpose, and it was a scary move, right? Financially, it was a really scary move for me and probably a little bit early for Australia, but I have never doubted, and this goes to the heart of purpose. I have never doubted that what I was doing was what I should be doing. And it just creates this whole new energy and just desire to throw yourself into things. So that's a bit of my background. So our agenda today is why a purpose. So I'm going to take you through the context of purpose, why now, the motivating forces behind today's purpose movement, which is really building, and why you, and the changing dynamics of leadership. So why purpose? Capitalism, as it exists today, is doing more harm than good in the world. Don't take my word for it. According to the Edelman Trust Barometer, 56% of people believe that that is the case. And Bank of America, their research department, earlier this year at Davos, the CEO of Bank of America said their research department has identified moral capitalism as one of the top 10 trends of this decade. You can see it there coming in at number 8 amongst all sorts of other things. And he actually said, we enter the 2020s with capitalism focused purely on profit maximization on the cusp of reform as it shifts away from shareholder supremacy towards greater involvement of stakeholders, i.e. moral capitalism. Now, don't be scared by this chart. I want to spend a little bit of time on this because there are a lot of misconceptions around purpose. And I think this is useful in really giving context around it, okay? So if you think about the roots of purpose being traditional corporate social responsibility, and then purpose being that the awakening to our why, right? I'm sure everyone knows about Simon Sinek, start with why, and realizing that when you understand your why, that's the real value you bring to society. But then I've got there on the right social purpose, and this is something I talk a lot about. So social purpose is about translating your why in impact that contributes to society in some way. And here in Australia, I use that term social purpose. I believe we've got some people in Singapore, but globally, purpose is social purpose. In many markets, purpose is already, I speak to a lot of people in this sort of community and they ask me, why do you talk about social purpose? It's because here in Australia, a lot of businesses still don't understand that purpose is supposed to be about social impact. So let me take you through this table. CSR is about incorporating sustainability, giving back into business. It's about balancing the books, right? Purpose is how your business or brand improves people's lives through its products or services. And social purpose is how it improves people's lives through its products and services and beyond. CSR is siloed. Purpose is tied usually to brand, marketing or HR led, skipped a line there. Social purpose is integrated across the business. CSR is tied to philanthropy, purpose tied to brand. Social purpose is tied to business and brand. CSR is linked to reputation and risk. Purpose is linked to differentiation and value creation, and social purpose is linked to innovation, growth, and leadership. CSR is not always, but usually about short-term tactical efforts because it's siloed in the business. Purpose is about long-term strategic impact, as is social purpose. CSR usually has ad hoc leadership. Purpose often is HR or marketing led, whereas social purpose has cross-functional teams and leadership. CSR is communicated usually via traditional media, as is purpose, whereas social purpose, because it's got social impact at its centre, is shared via creative places, via partners and collaborators. CSR is about reputational benefits, purpose, business benefits, and social purpose, business and social benefits. CSR is about we do and purpose. It's about we do. It's about this is what we're doing, you know, kind of look at us. Whereas social purpose is we collaborate with everyone because we're driven by the impact we want to create. CSR is sustainability led. Purpose is brand led, starts with why. Social purpose is impact led. It translates why into action and social impact. And finally, with CSR, the business is the hero. With purpose, the brand is the hero. And with social purpose, when it's done well, at least, others are the heroes because the brand is facilitator for impact. So I hope that's useful in giving some context and highlighting the key points of difference there. What I want to say is I'm not suggesting that purpose is a silver bullet for business. It's not, right? You've still got to do other things, but it provides a highly competitive advantage for businesses. So it enables you to differentiate your brand in an emotional way, attracting like-minded customers and high-quality employees to your business. It enables you to engage and energize your people, your employees, inspiring and unifying them around a clear and common cause or purpose. And it enables you to build trust and future-proof your business. So meeting the expectations of everyone, your customers, your employees, and investors today as well. The great news is that purpose-driven brands outperform other brands. And we've got a wonderful case study in Unilever, one of the world's biggest companies. So about 12 years ago, Unilever embarked on a new strategy. It was called the Sustainable Living Plan. And it was about decoupling their growth from environmental impact and investing in purpose-led brands. So brands like Dove and Ben & Jerry's, and over in the UK, Seventh Generation. And what they did was they were before their time, they were ahead of their time, and the market responded quite cynically to it. So they knew that they had to provide evidence that this wasn't just about do-gooding, it was a real business strategy that would drive business growth. And so they have tracked what they call their sustainable living brand portfolio versus their other brands. And they've done that continuously. And over the last 5 years, their sustainable living brand portfolio has consistently grown faster and contributed to more growth. So the last figures we have is from last year. They grew 69% faster than the rest of the business and contributed to 75% of their growth. So that's significant. Alan Jope is now the CEO at Unilever. He's now been there for 2 years, and he said, "We believe the evidence is clear and compelling that brands with purpose grow. Purpose creates relevance for a brand, it drives talkability, builds penetration, and reduces price elasticity. In fact, we believe this so strongly that we're prepared to commit that in the future, every Unilever brand will be a brand with purpose." That is their commitment, and that is the future they're moving to, which is really exciting. So we move now to why now. And I want to talk about the motivating forces behind today's purpose movement. Milton Friedman, the economist, for the past few decades, society has worked, at least in the West, according to Milton Friedman's philosophy, that the sole responsibility of business is to deliver shareholder return and increase its profits. And in fact, he said the social responsibility of business is to increase its profits, because the belief was that there would be a trickle-down effect and society at large would get value from that. I think there are large swathes of society who would disagree with that today, and I think it's probably common understanding that it hasn't worked as well as it was expected to work. So a few things have happened in the last few years which gives us some great reason for optimism. Someone there isn't muted. If you could just mute, that would be great. Thank you. So Larry Fink is the CEO of BlackRock. BlackRock is the world's largest investment company. They manage about $7 trillion in funds. And every January, Larry writes a public letter to the world's CEOs. And the financial world and the business world wait for this letter because it has huge impact and implications for business. And so they wait to see what this letter says. And 2 years ago, Larry wrote a letter that shook the business world and the financial world to its core, because he said it's no longer enough for business just to seek to make profit and to focus purely on shareholder return. He said today businesses must have a social purpose. He said without a sense of purpose, no company, either public or private, can achieve its full potential. It will ultimately, it will ultimately lose its license to operate from key stakeholders. Then last year, a year later, he built on that theme. And he told CEOs January last year that purpose is the animating force for profits. And he urged them to run their companies with social good in mind, and said they must step into a leadership vacuum left by governments and politicians. And then this last January gone, another major announcement, BlackRock pulled the plug on thermal coal. So he said that any company that generates more than 25% of their revenues from production of thermal coal, they were going to pull out of. I forgot to mention, when he made that first announcement 2 years ago, they actually drew a line in the sand and said they would no longer invest in companies unless they had a social purpose. So you can see over the course of 2 years, there has been a huge change. And you know, the media that this has caused has been significant. Then September, last year was an incredible year for responses from the business community. Last September, the Business Roundtable made an announcement. So the Business Roundtable is the closest representation to corporate America that you can have. It represents about 200 of the US's CEOs of the US's largest companies. And last September, they issued a statement with a new definition of purpose for a corporation. They said shareholder value is no longer everything. And they issued a 300-word statement, which didn't mention shareholders until word 250. Their commitments were to deliver value to our customers, to invest in our employees, to deal fairly and ethically with suppliers, to support the communities in which we work, and then, and only then, to generate long-term value for shareholders. So this was huge, absolutely massive, after BlackRock's move. And then, if those moves aren't enough, the following month, the Financial Times came out with a campaign, The New Agenda, calling for a reset of capitalism and saying that business must make a profit, but should serve a purpose too, and inserting themselves in the middle of that discussion. Then, January this year, whilst most businesses were looking at how do we become carbon neutral and making announcements around that, Microsoft came out with a huge announcement. They said that they will be carbon negative by 2030. And what that means in real terms is they are planning to halve their carbon emissions by 2030 and to offset more emissions than they make. They went further. They actually said by 2050, we will remove our historical carbon emissions. So all the emissions they made since Microsoft started, which I think was back in '75, they are planning to offset those. And they have committed $1 billion into a climate innovation fund. I think that was over the next 3 years. So as you can see from those big announcements and moves, capitalism itself is under threat, right? And we're seeing the rise of things like moral capitalism, ethical capitalism, stakeholder capitalism. Conscious capitalism has been around for a number of years, as has the Shared Value Initiative. B corporations, so ethically certified companies, is growing globally. Here in Australia is one of the fastest growing markets for B corporations. And going back to Mark Benioff, the Salesforce CEO, he's gone so far as to say capitalism as we know it is dead. That was this last January at Davos, the economic summit in Geneva. Also at Davos, the Bank of America CEO. So there was this whole theme and all these discussions at Davos this year about moral capitalism, and business leaders actually see the light of moral capitalism at Davos. Bank of America, you know, their research department have identified this, as I said earlier, as one of the decade's big trends, and they're responding accordingly. So they're investing $300 billion over the next decade in sustainable business projects. So each one of these, as you can see, is huge on its own individually, but put them together and what it shows you is a shift that's momentous. It's huge, right? And, you know, these leaders haven't suddenly woken up with a moral conscience. I'm sure nobody believes that. They're responding to the market, and the market is talking loudly. There are some massive drivers behind this movement, and I'm going to take you through, just top line, the 5 big drivers behind the purpose movement. Customers, obviously, their expectations on business. Employees now expect their business to be part of societal change. Trust in businesses at an all-time low. License to operate, so that need to future-proof business. And the obvious one, social impact, the fact that change is needed. So I'll go into this in a little bit more detail. So the first one is consumers. Your customers want it. Customers expect brands to act. So this is a slide from the Edelman Trust Barometer. Edelman have been researching and reporting on trust for the last 20 years. And the percent of customers who consider themselves to be belief-driven buyers, 64%, increase of 13 points from 2017. So belief-driven buyers are buyers who choose, switch, avoid, or boycott a brand based on its stand on societal issues. And the idea behind this is brand democracy, the belief that consumers have that brands can be a powerful force for change, a belief that they expect brands to represent them and solve problems in society. And they know they have power. We know we have power. Our power is our wallet, and our wallet is our vote. Consumers will support brands with purpose. So you can see here on the left-hand side, societal impact and ethics are the most common reasons why millennials change their relationships with business. So whether it's changing their relationship in the positive or the negative. 42% have said they would start or deepen their relationship with a business if it has products or services that positively impact the environment or society. And then 38% would stop or lessen their relationship if it has products or services that negatively impact the environment or society. Ethical behavior is the biggest driver to change. Then if you look on the right-hand side, there's a lot of research around intention. So consumers who say, yes, I would buy a product if it supported a cause or, was more sustainable. I'll pay more for a product, I'll pay a premium for a product, I'll buy an unknown product. That's all about intention, and there's a lot of that research around. I've pulled this one out because it's local, it's Australian research from Damasio, Cavell and Co. And it shows that 25% of Australian millennials switched brands in the past because, in the past year, I think that says, it's hidden behind my little thing, because it supported a charity. So this isn't about intention, this is about consumers reporting on actual behaviour change. That report was from December 2017. I would absolutely guarantee that that figure has increased phenomenally. Second one, employees expect it. This has been a huge driver of change. Now, Gallup report from a couple of years ago shows that 86% of Australian and New Zealand employees are not engaged. This is about self-reporting, okay? So 14% consider themselves to be engaged in their work, 71% not engaged, and 15% are actively disengaged. That's phenomenal, don't you think? I mean, it's mind-blowing. 86% not engaged. The impact that must have on productivity of business and our economy is absolutely mind-blowing. So let's dive into this. Employee expectations now include societal change. So this is a report from Beaumont People, who are a recruitment agency here in Australia. And they published last year the world's first and Australia's first meaningful work report. And they highlighted that 96% of Australians have factors other than pay rated as most important in contributing to their overall happiness and meaning at work. Have a look at that. Pay, 4%. In terms of contributing to their overall happiness and meaning at work. The most important contributing factors are leadership, culture, and purpose. The bottom three, positive feedback, complexity of work, and reward or pay. Work which makes a difference to broader society is ranked third when asked what is the most important contributor to meaningful work. So 94% feel that making a difference and contributing to society is important. 94%. I wonder how many businesses are delivering on that. 80% said they couldn't work for an organisation that provides products or services that conflict with their ethics and values. And 92% report that their ideal employer would make a meaningful difference in people's lives. So go back to that disengagement, right? That chart I showed you there. I wonder if employees are disengaged because businesses are not delivering on their expectations in this way. The other expectation employees have is that CEOs must lead. Look at this. Edelman Trust Barometer again. It's important that my employer's CEOs speak out on one or more of these issues. So 92% of people believe that their CEO should speak out on training for jobs of the future, automation's impact on jobs, ethical use of tech, income inequality, diversity, climate change, and immigration, even immigration. And 74% believe that CEOs should take the lead on change rather than waiting for government to impose it. And that's up 9 points from 2018. The third issue is trust, going back to my introduction of this session. So why trust, okay? Trust is everything. You think about your own, how you make your choices, you know, the suppliers you use, the businesses you support. Trust is everything. So Edelman, in 20 years of research on trust, you can see on the left a huge body of work, you know, over 2 million respondents, 145 companies, 80,000 employee reviews, blah, 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 blah. And they've identified that trust matters to so many stakeholders. It matters to consumers. Trusted companies have stronger consumer buyers and advocates. It matters to employees. It drives workplace recommendations. It matters to regulators and investors. Trusted companies have greater license to operate. It provides resilience against risk, never more important than today, right? Trusted companies have stronger consumer buyers and advocates. It matters to the market, again, because it drives workplace recommendations. And from a media coverage perspective, trusted companies have greater license to operate. And yet, it's so important, and yet it's in short supply. Millennials' opinion of business ethics is at its lowest level in 4 years. I just want to qualify this because I find a lot of people still think of millennials as 20-somethings. The oldest millennial is now 40. Okay, so millennials are the dominant group in our workforce. And for only 44% believe businesses behave ethically. 83% of them believe business focuses on its own agenda rather than considering wider society. And that's up from 69% 3 years ago. I wanted to share this because I thought it was interesting. When we think about trust, we think about what makes you trust a company. And some people may think, okay, well, it's about how, you know, the quality of my product. And of course, that's important. But it seems that ethical drivers are more important than anything else. So they're actually 3 times more important to company trust than competence. If you look at that graph there, integrity, 49%. It is the dominant driver. Purpose, 12%. Dependability, 15%. These all level up to a banner, a group banner under ethics, 76%. And ability or competence is just 24%. License to operate. I mean, this has really been the theme throughout this. It's, does a business that is not contributing to society have a license to operate to its customers, to its employees, to its local community, to its suppliers. And given the movements we're seeing in the business world here, I think, well, it's clear that business leaders recognise that their licence to operate is under threat. And then finally, the obvious one, the need for change. You know, here in Australia, we've had the worst bushfires in our history. The gap between the wealthy and the poor is getting wider. You know, women over 50 are the highest growing group of people becoming homeless. We have increasing levels of mental health and depression across all our age groups. It's, we need to change, you know. Capitalism is not delivering, at capitalism as it currently sits, based on driving shareholder return, is not delivering what it promised to all parts of society and to the planet that we depend on. Change is needed, it's clear, and business is the vehicle to do it. So, you know, do we just put our head in the sand, or do we make a stand and use this vehicle, this really powerful vehicle of business, to create it? So I want to talk here about coronavirus, because that has also had an impact. And obviously we're all going through this right now, so we don't know what the outcome looks like. But there are a lot of commentators who are saying business as usual is over. You can't go through something like this. We never expected that, you know, the very basis of our society would come to a halt because of something like this. Well, maybe some of the people advising on pandemics did, but most of us didn't. So business as usual is over, and that's what many commentators are saying. McKinsey have said that the coronavirus is not only a health crisis of immense proportion, it's also an imminent restructuring of the global economic order. And their answer on how leaders can begin navigating to what's next is a call to act across 5 stages, leading from the crisis of today to the next normal that will emerge after the battle against coronavirus has been won. And that calls for resolve, resilience, return, reimagination, and reform. I would challenge that reimagination needs to happen before we return. Now. It needs to happen now. Acceleration of stakeholder capitalism is one of the dominant scenarios, according to many, many experts around the world. I want to share with you one report that came out a couple of weeks ago from Salesforce and Deloitte. They collaborated and they got their best analysts to come together and to identify what they believed, based on the contributing factors, would be the most likely scenarios coming out of this. And they identified 4 scenarios. They have said, they were asked, which one of these do you think is the most likely? And they've said, we are not in a position to say that. It depends on things that are still unfolding now. The 4 scenarios are the passing storm. So the pandemic is managed due to governments responding effectively, but it still has major repercussions. It disproportionately affects SMEs and lower and middle income individuals and communities. Scenario 2 is one close to my heart, good company. And that is where governments around the world struggle to handle the crisis alone, and companies step up as a key part of the solution and an acceleration of trends towards stakeholder capitalism. So note that term, acceleration, because that was a movement that was already building very, very strongly. The third scenario is lone wolves, and that's about, you know, if we have a prolonged pandemic, governments are likely to start adopting isolationist policies and increase surveillance. And then the fourth scenario is sunrise in the east. So China and other East Asian nations are more effective in managing the virus and shift in global powers, and they take the reins of power. So that's an interesting report. You can Google it. If you'd like me to send you a link to the report, then connect with me after this, please. Who here is of my generation from the 80s? Do you remember Talking Heads and their song Once in a Lifetime? That's what we have today. Because of COVID-19, we have a once in a lifetime opportunity to create real change, to create something that works for more of society. And now is the time to act. You know, who would have thought that we would have ever been in this position where we could actually reflect on what is a better way? You know, what is a better way to create a fairer society and to stop our path to destruction for climate change and for all the negative impacts that coronavirus is creating? It is providing us with a gift to actually stop, reset, think, and reimagine how we could do this better. Now is the time to act, right? Society needs a better approach to business. Consumers want it, your customers and clients want it, your employees expect it. Ethical investment is driving it, and COVID-19 is potentially accelerating it. Why you? Quick time check. Okay, why you? Society's traditional leaders are distrusted. This is before COVID-19, and it'll be interesting. I mean, it depends how well we come out of this, but it will be interesting to measure how trusted they are after this. But for now, this is what we have. And if you look at this graph, it shows the bottom 46% religious leaders, 42% government leaders, 36% the very wealthy. So they're in distrust territory. The groups we trust the most, thankfully, are scientists, people in our local community, citizens of my country, CEOs, and even sort of in the mid areas, journalists. So there's a lack of confidence in society's natural leaders, right, to address our countries and globally to address challenges. Activism is on the rise. You know, we've seen climate protests. We've had the right, you know, Greta Thunberg, a teenager, has stood up and called what we adults in the room haven't been able to do. And she has inspired a movement behind her. Activism in automation and the impact on jobs, activism on income inequality, activism with the Me Too movement and toxic masculinity. Activism is on the rise. And as a chief purpose activist, that makes me very happy to see. Business and its leaders are stepping into the leadership gap. So Patagonia, I mean, Patagonia are the poster child for purpose. They are an apparel retailer, you know, specializing in outdoor clothing and surf clothing. And their purpose is they're in business to save the planet. And they live their purpose consistently. They are stepping into the leadership gap. They are holding President Trump to account. They're suing him for removing protections for Bears Ears National Monument, huge national park area. They gave their $10 million tax cut that Trump brought in when he first came in. They saved $10 million in tax. And Rose Macario, the CEO, stood up and she committed every dollar of the $10 million they saved back to the planet. Everything they do is about leadership on saving the planet. And it's not just globally. Australia is following the global movement. We're seeing leaders step up all over the place. We're seeing Mike Cannon-Brookes, co-founder of Atlassian, is leaning into activism and leading the business movement in support of action on climate change. You know, a couple of years ago, we saw Qantas CEO Alan Joyce spearhead the campaign for the yes vote on same-sex marriage. We're seeing things like Simon Sheikh, who was the ex-GetUp boss. He has, he's got seed funding, and he's created Future Super, a superannuation company that is all about environmental protection and going fossil free. And here in Australia with B Corporation, which is ethical certification, Australia and New Zealand is the fastest growing region for B Corps. 270 companies certified currently from 46 different industries. Mostly SMEs, but some larger companies are starting to join the B Corp movement as well. The world is crying out for new leaders, and the world needs new leaders. They need leaders who have empathy, that are not just driven by interest. They need leaders who have vision, who can actually imagine a better future. They need leaders who are collaborative and who will bring people along to create that better future. And most importantly, we need leaders who are brave, who will step up and who will challenge going back to business as usual. I'm not just talking about CEOs. You know, let's take our lead from Greta Thunberg. Let's take our lead from a teenager. I have to say, I was one of many who attended the climate strike protests last year in Sydney, and I was just so inspired, you know, hearing students stand up and talk with such conviction and so articulately and with such passion and belief that they could create that change just made me so, it made my heart soar, and it made me actually believe that we can do this because the groundswell is there. So the question has moved, I believe, beyond why you. Today, the real question is, what will you do? So my challenge to you today is, what will you do today? What action will you take to seize this once in a lifetime opportunity to reimagine and reshape a better society? Whatever role you're in, you are in a role of influence or leadership. You are in a role that can make a difference. If a teenager can do it, any one of us can do it. So, will you make a stand? Or will you bury your head in the sand? I would suggest that everybody who has joined this session today is likely to make a stand. The very fact that you are here today says something, and my bet is you will make a stand. We need to move forward with collective intention. I don't know what that looks like at the moment, but my vision is a world where business is a force for good and brands and marketing drive profit through purpose. And I believe that's a vision that can be realized. So I'd like to invite you to join me on that journey and see how we can come together collectively and look at creating that future. So I want to thank you for attending this Lunch and Learn today, and I want to give you an easy next step to take. If you want to get inspired on business and brands doing good during this COVID-19 crisis, we're about to launch a new online resource, which we've been collating all these examples of businesses doing good so that we can help inspire people. So we're going to make that available free to people. If you want to become better informed with insights, resources, up-to-date inspirational brands doing well by doing good, our e-newsletter, you can sign up to that. That's free, and that will keep you in the know. And if you want to get clear on your opportunity and how you can act and what you can do, then we can send you an invitation to a free 45-minute strategy call with me. So type yes in the chat box, or click the link provided. I believe General Assembly, actually the link doesn't link through, so if you'd like to just type yes in the chat box, General Assembly will send you an email with a link where you can sign up for this. And so for the first 10 people to sign up, I'd like to give you a free copy of my Amazon best-selling book, Path to Purpose. If you are outside of Australia, I'll get in touch, but postage and handling costs apply to that. But yeah, come and join me, please, and type yes in the chat box, and we'll send you information on how to get access to all these free resources and more. So I'd like to open up now for questions. I'm just going to open up this Q&A box. And okay, so let me just have a look. Okay, will a recording of this and the slides be available after the session? I believe yes. General Assembly, if you type yes in the box, General Assembly will be able to send you the recording as well. David Head, what is a simple example of what Unilever did to show purpose for a brand? Oh, look, there are many examples. Probably the best known one is Dove, and they have been consistent with this with the Dove brand, where they are challenging the stereotypical perceptions of beauty in women. And they've been doing that through the models they use. They've been doing that through not retouching photography. They've been doing that by supporting self-esteem workshops in schools for young women and in all sorts of ways. So that's a very simple example. Ben & Jerry's is another Unilever brand, and they are activists, and they've done many, many campaigns. They're one of my case studies in my book, Path to Purpose. Craig, when I say both, I refer to growth as a broader terms, not just financial growth, but growth and maturity to be closer to their why. I'm not sure what that means, Craig, sorry. Is Australian business in line with the US business leaders? In terms of purpose, when we are lagging a little bit behind, but there has been in the last couple of years huge shift, and we are starting that move. So the US has been on this path for longer. They have been doing it strategically and doing it well. We are playing catch up, but we're getting there. So that's good news. Craig, coming out of COVID-19, do you expect that governments and their economies will become focused again or fall back to traditional capitalism, or it's a wake-up call and there'll be a further growth in moral capitalism? Look, that's a hard one, Craig. I think it really depends on how quickly we come out, how big the damage is. You know, there are some who will say employees will be happy to have a job, any job. But there are so many commentators saying this is going to accelerate moral capitalism. So I guess if we come out of this in horrible shape, and if it takes years for us to come out of it, the longer it takes, the harder it's going to be to imagine that we're going to be able to move with momentum to a better future. But if we come out sooner or in medium, you know, at a mid-level, then I think it is absolutely going to accelerate moral capitalism. So 75% of millennials did not switch brands. Yeah, fair call, but this is growing, and I would point to evidence of many brands that lead with purpose and are able to easily charge a price premium and do not seem to have to fight in pricing and discounting as many of their competitors are. Patagonia is one such example, but there are many others. What is engaged? I guess you're talking about engagement in business. Engaged, I would say, and based on what I've read of the research, is they care about the quality of their work and what they're doing. Hi, Hayley. Thank you. Hayley Cavill is on here. So that was her research report that I talked about. And she's actually said she's updated stats on Australians boycotting and supporting brands in last year. Brilliant. So, so Hayley Cavill, if you want to connect with her as well, Hayley, H-A-I-L-E-Y, Cavill, C-A-V-I-L-L. I'm sure she will be able to share some of the research with you. How does a company measure trust? Oh, that's a big question. I don't think I can answer that quite quickly here, but if you would like to connect with me later, I'd be happy to have a discussion with you on that, David. A company like Apple gets widely criticized for a lot of things, but the general public know little about its contributions to society because they choose not to publicize these programs. Yeah, that's an interesting one. And I think it goes to how you approach it. If Apple are doing good things and they're just doing them themselves, then it's hard to publicize that because that's like saying, look at me, look at what we're doing, aren't we great? And that's going to grate on people. Whereas if they actually have an impact goal and something that they're actually driving towards, and they invite collaboration from people to do it, it's a shift in dynamic, how you communicate with people. Instead of look at us and look at what we're doing, it's join us and help us achieve this. And I would love to see our, companies like Apple open up in that way, because I think it would have huge impact. I'm just going to... yes, please, can you send the Salesforce link? Yep. What if you can't think of anything? I'm sorry, David, I don't know what that refers to. How do you think a self-employed person as opposed to a corporation can contribute? Abigail, I think there are many ways you can do that, even more so as a self-employed person, and contributing in a way that creates meaningful impact can be so easy. One thing I'll point you to is an organization called B1G1. So B with the numeric 1, G1.com. And they enable small organizations to create impact in their everyday activities from as little as 1 cent. So please check them out, because they do amazing things, and they're an organization I partner with. Kirsty, do you work mostly with big multinational companies who are established, or do you work with early stage businesses looking to launch as well? Both, actually. I've just run a pilot of a group online program, mini program, with smaller businesses for the first time. So generally I work with medium-sized and larger businesses, but I have now worked through my product, so I'm looking at opening it up, and I've done a pilot which went really well. Thanks for the presentation. What are the top 3 takeaways for organizations being purpose-led into the future? I'm just looking at the time there. And from a personal profile point of view, the key tips for being purpose-led in our everyday working and non-working lives. 3 tips for being purpose-led into the future. Start. Let me give you 1 tip. Has to start. Understand the opportunity and look at how you can start. If you can identify a purpose and a social purpose that is closely aligned with your business or your brand, then you're going to be able to really leverage it well, and you'll be able to scale your impact, drive success for your business, and create sustainable impact. So I've got some tools and frameworks to help you do that. So please get in touch. You can go to my website, thecauseeffect.com.au, or connect with me on LinkedIn. If you search Carolyn Butler-Madden, I'm the only one there, funnily enough. So connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to share some tools and frameworks. Jackie, can governments ever really get this right, or will they always be the benchmark for wanting more? Yeah, great question. I don't know, that question's bigger than me, I'm afraid. Brent, did Unilever drop any brands that were not through their audit socially responsible? Great question, Brent. And I don't know if they have, but they have actually said now that they are planning to do that. So that is part of their strategy going forward. They're actually going to get rid of brands that are not socially responsible. Sam, what's the one thing that excites you the most about the next 3 to 6 months? Thank you for this question. This is our opportunity to reimagine a better way, a better society, a better way of doing business. And this excites the bejesus out of me, because we've got an incredible opportunity to do it now, and I can see the interest in purpose is there. So it's time to crank it up. Justin, why do you think the book Firms of Endearment and Conscious Capitalism have struggled to change business mindsets to the benefits of purpose? Oh, that's a big question, Justin. Okay, and Conscious Capitalism is, I was part of that movement and on their board. I love the organization. The books are incredible. I feel that maybe because their model around the world is non-profit, I feel that it actually goes against the whole philosophy of conscious capitalism being in profit. And I think it's held them back. I think it's limited them because they're dependent on volunteers. So they haven't been able to scale their impact. Rob, hi Carolyn, great talk. What's your opinion on companies such as Facebook and Google? Oh, look, we're over time. Sorry, guys. I will get a copy of these questions, and I'm happy to connect with you individually and come back to you. There are some great questions there. Thank you very much. That was B1G1, as in buy one, give one. Yeah, some more questions coming through, but we are out of time. So I would like to ask you to connect with me on LinkedIn or email me directly at Carolyn, C-A-R-O-L-Y-N, @thecauseeffect.com.au. And I'd love to chat with you. Thank you very much. There are still questions coming in, but we are past time. So I am going to have to call it and say thank you very much for joining us. Have a great day today and enjoy your weekends. Goodbye.